Hey, it's your boy Chrys, Players Pick Podcast, here to shout out my sponsor, Road Roaster Coffee. Road Roaster Coffee makes an amazing array of light, medium, and dark roasts. My favorite is this kick-ass right here. You can check out roadroastercoffee.com and use Players Pick as your coupon code for 20% off your very first order. Enjoy the pod.
Players Pick Podcast, picks and perspective with Chrys Johnson. Palpable paradox.
At some point, but let's just see. 'Cause it's just not. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
How are you, man?
Oh man, so good to be here with you right now.
Yeah, nice to be with you.
Yeah, it's you're one of my favorite people, and we always end up finding each other one way or another, having a phone call and catching up, and it's nice to have you back on the podcast, man.
Yeah, and it's nice to kind of have it's like we haven't talked on the phone in a while, so we're having like a real proper, like, in real time. It's kind of the best way to do it, right? Like unrehearsed.
Absolutely.
So where are you right now? Are you up in
I'm in Chico. Yeah, I'm in I moved to a new house. I was almost 2 years at the first place that I moved to, and it was great. But they sold the house, and I got into a little bit of a grief thing around that because I really loved that house, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
I hate it when like the carpet's pulled out from underneath me. But I was like, it just kept saying, man, this is your opportunity to practice. It's just another thing, and you know how to navigate it. And just because I felt like that house had the first time I had a lot of space for all my projects. I'm like, oh man, the yoga stuff's over there, the altar's here, nice, comfortable, like living area, bedroom, studio is here, and a guest bedroom. I love having it's like my first time really having a guest bedroom.
Yeah.
So I was like, anybody, come stay with me, baby. I got you. It's like,
yeah, guest bedrooms is a nice thing to have for sure.
But what about you? Are you in the apartment there in LA, or what has shifted for you?
So I've been nomadic for 9 months, man. I a friend of mine who I've kind of collaborated with on some projects. She lives in Berlin. She works for Danny Elfman. She just like was at my place 9 months ago finishing. She's also just finished her MFA at UCLA. And I just went to her graduation thing, and she just one day was just like, would you be interested in like, could I stay here? Like, because I had talked about wanting to kind of hit the road and do some stuff after finishing the record. And I was like, actually, there's not a lot of people I would let stay in my home, but she's one of them. She's just really reliable and trustworthy and just feels like a safe, respectful person of space, and like a real sister to me. And so she's been there for 9 months, and I've literally been floating. Since I finished the record, I basically, between 2020 and finishing the record it really took everything out of me, and I just needed to kind of fill the well again. And my way of doing that was either go on a long-term meditation retreat or just become a nomad. And so it's been this nomadic thing, which is really interesting because I just roll with wherever I need to be, no plan, no. And so it's been like many months in and out of Miami where my folks are, and I have a lot of friends there. So I'll go and stay with friends and do things down there. I'm actually headed there at the end of this month on the 30th to spend the month of July there, because I'm doing a remix of Focus with Warren Riker for the 30th anniversary, which is next year.
Wow.
So yeah, we're like planting all the seeds for the 30th situation, and one of them is remixing the record over there at the Gibbs studio, at Barry Gibbs studio, which Warren built. So it's like this really killer fucking space. And so I'm psyched about that. And then right now I'm at my friend Dave's. He's a brother who's so sweet, and basically, you know, I have a room in his place upstairs with my own bathroom, and which is in Hollywood, you know, not far from the hood that we were in, just a little further north, more deeper into the city. But yeah, so I kind of have this place, and I've always had this as a little spot because I have in his garage like a lab where I do the orgonite stuff and work on these things and stuff. So it's like I have a workspace here already. So it's kind of been great to be here again and be with him. And he's like another solitary walker, kind of, you know, definitely a loner in a sense. So we know how to be alone together, you know what I mean? And be in the same space and do our thing, and then, you know, come together. But it's a lot of just doing our thing, and I'll just see him, you know. And it's big enough. It's 3 stories, and there's like, you know, the rooms are upstairs, and then there's this living room space, and then downstairs is like a garage with a whole setup, you know, like. So, but yeah, man, just really, you know, I was in Jamaica for 3 weeks. I was invited there from the psilocybin group out of LA that's doing all this research, you know, for therapeutic uses of psilocybin. And the reason why a lot of these groups have been going to Jamaica is because it's technically not legal, but they don't enforce anything there. So it's like mushrooms are everywhere.
Okay.
And yeah, it's really kind of been a bit of, yeah, like Miami, you know, bouncing around California, a lot of San Diego stuff because my brother's there, and just kind of hanging with people down there, and then a little bit of LA, and I might do some NorCal adventures soon. I'd like to be there for the summer, actually. You know,
Please.
I'm thinking about a little Shasta moment, man. I'd like to kind of just spend some time in Shasta, and
yeah, and you have a place to stay right here on the way up.
Nice.
I'm on your way to Shasta, dude. So
cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's, you know, and thinking about more retreats, and like my priority, you know, right now is my inner work, you know, the spiritual path. It's like I'm promoting stuff. I'm obviously have a record. I'm on, you know, on the heels of a record that's come out, but because I'm not actively doing traditional promotional things like touring, I have to think outside the box, you know, and one of them is to make this interesting film, but that's kind of unfolding as it needs to. I'm kind of just showing up for the process, and so it's just been a really moment to moment thing of just being, do you know what I mean? Like just taking care of my mind, and actually trying to be of service more and show up for people. I'm realizing that's kind of like what feels the most purposeful these days, is just to help others, you know, and just really show up for others. And being in LA, as you know, you split like right when it all went down, but you see so much suffering here. I mean, it is just next level, dude. And I'm very careful to not numb myself to what I'm witnessing on a daily basis, which is tremendous suffering. I mean, hits you hard, you know, and so I pay attention, and I feel what's going on, and it's a real opportunity to work on your mind and your heart, because you're bearing witness to things that they don't feel exciting to me. It's like, I know for someone in their mid-20s coming to LA, it's exciting. The city, the energy, tents everywhere, people taking shits on the corner, fucking, I mean, it's like the unhoused situation is out of control in LA, especially. I don't know. I mean, I know.
Sure is.
I think it is up in maybe Berkeley or something too, right? But
it's all up through Northern California, and it's hitting my town here in Chico. It's been an issue because of all the fires, especially. The fires have displaced thousands of people.
Yeah, man. So it's yeah. I'm like, I treat it as like a battleground, like, the Krishna battleground of working with your mind, and I always admired these monks that were in monasteries in, for example, in Manhattan in the 70s or whatever, when it was rough in parts of New York, and they're like doing their meditation practice. It's like it's really easy to access stable and peaceful states of mind when you're hidden in the mountains with this beautiful environments, and it's helpful to be in those places too. But there is something to be said about being right in the middle of the fire, and still trying to maintain some degree of openness and attunement, to your surroundings. And so I'm balancing it between the beautiful, spaces like Jamaica, which blew my mind.
I bet.
I mean, literally, it was, and figuratively, but it was one of those places that, like, I had never been there in the Caribbean. It's just those waters, dude, are fucking. And I think it's because they have these they're called the Blue Mountains, and so the Blue Mountains have these rivers that flow into the lagoons and all the little beaches. So the waters are like sapphire crystal. I mean, Whoa. It's just like the clearest, most beautiful water ever. And like, for example, the famous Blue Lagoon. I don't know if you remember,
yeah,
that movie with Brooke Shields, but that's like that lagoon is like this trippy thing that's like the surface is like fresh water, so it's like drinkable fucking Evian shit. It's like Fiji water, but underneath is the salt, so it's this warm base and then this salty, this fresh top, and it's because of the water that comes in from the mountains that mixes with the Caribbean Sea, and it feels so magical. The sounds of the birds, and it's a rainforest. Jamaica's got the whole northeastern end of the island is all rainforest. So it's got that Costa Rica vibe where it's like jungle but meets the sea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my vibe.
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, I could spend more time here. I really. Yeah, especially when you get out of the tourist spots. You know what I mean? Because there's the touristy places like Negril and Montego Bay. When you go into the more rural areas and just get with the locals in these quiet villages, it's like, wow, this is a special place, man. There's a vibe there,
So this was a trip to be a part of some sort of like clinical trial, or was this more of like a healing wellness psilocybin thing? Describe a little bit about what was that?
It's a company actually out of LA that they're called SOS, Sense of Self Institute, and they have been doing, I think they started about a year ago. It's a couple people that are the main, it's like a collective actually, but there's a couple of people that really started it. And, they've just been deep in the model of medicine for therapeutic purposes. And, what's interesting about their thing was that they've been doing retreats, and I think they've had some in Joshua Tree and other places, but this was the first one in Jamaica. And they were, I think the reason why I was able to go and was invited is because first off, they were looking for people with experience. And I think I fit some demographic of age and whatever level of experience I had, which, and as you know, I'm a heavy duty psychonaut, I'm well seasoned and groomed in these medicines. So it's like coming home for me. And so we were doing heroic doses in this beautiful yoga space. It was actually a retreat center.
Wow.
In the Negril, but kind of outside of the tourist district. Stunning environment. So magical, and had my own cabin, and it was facing this like incredible sea in the Caribbean and the whole vibe. And then we did the medicine in this kind of huge yoga vaulted ceiling wood room in the middle of the rainforest vibe. So you were just like surrounded by fucking deep nature. And they're basically have kind of merged all of the Western models of working with your mind and I think they've taken a lot of stuff from this company called the Hoffman Institute, I think, from what I understand, and some other stuff where you do these deep dives, these questionnaires into your childhood trauma and your ancestry and how it relates to certain parental figures and family, and then sabotaging patterns and all that. I mean, the booklet was like this thick. You know what I mean? It was like I journaled so much and had to write and think about things that I haven't really thought about in a long time. And this was all setting up the journeys. So and there's like, cranial, sacral, somatic practices. They incorporated everything, all of the spiritual modalities into the working with the mushrooms, which I found fascinating. Like normally you go and just trip your ass off, maybe talk to a shaman or have a moment in a clinical setting in a room with one person. But this was like, they packed it in. You know what I mean?
Wow. So the framework is really set up to maximize your openness, it sounds like.
Yeah, and to kind of access it's really all about, and their view of mushroom psilocybin is that it's the child. It's like the medicine that goes to your, they call it the children. So it goes to that state of being a child and your childhood trauma, which I found ayahuasca will do that. I mean, what I'm realizing is you do high enough doses of psilocybin, which the second night, I think I did 30 grams of a blue albino. Like, I mean, it was...
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Like, I mean, but what's so interesting is that, and this is, that you'll relate to this, is having a very consistent and dedicated meditation practice. It goes hand in hand with these medicines. And what I'm finding is in that I can take them, be completely blasted, and I don't take them and put on goggles and headphones. I can sit in a meditation position and meet it like a practice. Like, here we are, let's see where we're going, and really have a direct experience. And, it's what I found is that it's not unlike, especially high doses like that, doing duration sits on a retreat where you're trying to sit for 4 to 6 hours without getting up, and you're working through the most uncomfortable states of mind, but you have to ride it out,
Man.
And that kind of discipline, once you kind of get knowing how to work with those states, that's basically what those medicines are doing. It's putting you in those states and seeing how you meet them, right? And a lot of people will work through trauma. They'll have physical symptoms. Maybe their arm will start twitching, you know what I mean? Or they'll get locked into a state of ego where they can't let go. You know what I mean? There's all these. But for me, it's like, it's really been like a coming home. I get into these states and I feel completely like I might touch into things. Like I remember I'll tell you this, I went in thinking, and this is what I told them when they interviewed me before I was invited, because I was the last person, I think, invited. It was like, I found out literally like a week and a half before, and they're like, okay, you can go. And I'm like, great. I'm like, you know what I mean? This is how my life is right now. It's just like, and I said, I want to work deeper into my grief. I want to actually, I experienced some really watershed stuff in 2020. I lost 2 lifelong friends, and I want to get in the trenches of it. And although I've been in the trenches all this time, I just want to see where the medicine takes me with it. And I had an ayahuasca ceremony. I've done a lot of ayahuasca since the early 2000s, but I took a break for many years, and then I did a ceremony like 3-4 months ago and had a little bit of a dip into that energy of the grief. But I thought I would go into it hard with this psilocybin stuff. And what was so fascinating was, second night, totally. And how I described the state I was in was at the peak, it was like post, past, present, and future. It's like a fourth state where you're just, and you can't even use the word nowness. You know what I mean? It's more of just like claircognizant, clair empathetic, like you're just completely in this non-dual state of awareness where there's no sense of identity, yet you're completely like I'm like, you'd think I'm sober. I could have talked to you like this. I was totally lucid, totally clear, and totally tuned into the space, you know? And I was like, you know, kind of thinking like I want to egg on my grief. I want to rip open something. And I brought Xerox copies of Sean and Sean, photos of them. And I had them right there next to me. And at one point, I like leaned off my meditation bench and just looked at them, and I felt nothing. And what I realized, dude, is that the charge of my grief that because I had so much survivor's guilt I've been working with when it first happened, this idea that I can't carry on with this work, at even like questioning my path as a musician, because my whole identity was forged with them. I started really with these guys, especially Reinert, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like your whole life is wrapped around this identity with this person, and how you associate your path as a musician, or I should speak first person, my path. But what I realized was that moment was that I was able to stop carrying around that guilt and that sense of that their deaths had something to do with me, that it was like it was like the charge had dropped. And it's not that I didn't feel anything in the sense that it wasn't a lack of empathy feeling. It was you don't have to do this anymore, you know? And I can cry saying this to you right now, because it's been really such a tremendous thing to go through this thing, you know, this journey of grief. And I know you're never done. This is something. It's like you're forever changed, and it's now it's part of my biology and my DNA. But I've been grieving so hard, especially that first year and trying to finish the record. I mean, months of just paralyzed by grief, you know what I mean? Barely able to play my guitar kind of stuff, you know? And just tears and purging and just, I mean, so incredibly, almost like I couldn't ever imagine it would be that powerful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a high disciplined person who generally has a high degree of self-control. And this motherfucker got me and said, no, none of your techniques and none of your ways of thinking you can, you know, stabilize aren't going to work here. I'm going to rip you apart and annihilate you. And just basically, it's like you're just getting completely gutted to the point where you can't intellectualize anymore what's happening. It's just somatic, you know? So I've been doing like a 9-month trauma healing program as well, you know, this training course, which is all about somatic practices and trying to really get more open and connected to where my body meets all of this. And, you know, yoga is one way in which we do this. So I can very easily get into that, where I touch into where it is. And then I'm like, you know, and again, all related to these psychedelic experiences. They're all connected. It's like, and
Absolutely.
Yeah. And after that second night of the, you know, first night, I probably did 12, 15 grams. And then they were doing this dispensing of tea. And then the second night, they saw that I was this very seasoned psychonaut. And they're like, we're just going to give you a bowl to chew of this strain, really strong strain. And, you know, it took me probably 20 minutes to eat through that whole bowl. I mean, it was just like eating one shroom after another. Like, but I was, you know, I was just ready to get in there. But what I found, and it was funny because this is the other thing, Chrys, is they videotaped the whole thing. Like, they're making a documentary. So they documented all of it. And we had cameras in our rooms that we could go and talk to, like real world style, you know? And I was like, I think after that second night, I was like, I think I'm done with mushrooms. I don't need them anymore. Like and now, you know, because there's so much integration that happens weeks after that you don't realize, like the mushrooms almost know more about you than you know about them kind of thing. Like Like they're really working. There's an intelligence to that plant, to the mycelium, that is really interesting, and and so I don't, I don't rule out. You're never done, and the medicine. But I did reach a point where I'm realizing they don't work in the way that they used to.
Okay.
I think having done so much and being so familiar with those states of mind through meditation practice, like I don't have, and having done so much work on so much of that stuff early on, that it's like the purpose of it, of what the medicine serves for me over the years, is more about holding space for others. I was really thinking about everybody else in the room and are they doing okay? I was checking in on everybody.
That makes perfect sense to me, Paul, because you're a psychonaut, you're an elder of the psychonaut community at this point.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you might still in some ways really still identify with a previous version of yourself in a way, right? But where it sounds like you're finding out is that, oh no, there's through this grief, through this having loved and lost and had these really profound relationships that shaped, who you thought you were, who you might have been. But now it's like you're shifting towards this space. Oh, well, if I'm going to be here, be a part of this scene, then it is for me to hold the space for this, right? Yeah. To open my arms and be the one that is the calm center amongst all of this turbulent upwelling, because that's a lot of what these medicines do, right? Is they shake us up, they spin us out, and they show us that we're not as calm and collected as we thought we were.
That's its job, is to go to your wounds, to go to your places that you feel a false sense of security, all the places that the layers we put on as an identity, as an ego to navigate this world, all that stuff gets broken up with the psychedelics. So you have a lot of people are like, who am I? Where am I? And they'll tense up. But if you, again, meditation practice, dissolving, learning how to let go. And, I was even thinking about, there's just so many things that correlate with Buddhist practice too, the states of mind. I mean, what's so interesting is there's volumes and volumes of texts in those, especially like all those Tibetan monasteries, that they wrote all about all these states of mind. I mean, they understood all of this. This is what, China was going and trying to burn all those things down, because it's like the secrets of the universe, essentially, how your mind works, right?
Absolutely.
And how it's connected to everything else. And so this stuff's been written about, and it's so I'm finding like, that's the thing, is people who don't have a practice and they go and do these medicines, it can be really disorienting, because you're going into the unknown. And for me, every time I sit, I'm going into the unknown. I mean,
right.
And really what I'm doing now by doing this nomadic thing is going into the unknown. It's just busting out of the cocoon, all of the safe places that I keep. It's like, this is how I find I try and navigate the world, especially as an artist. And I've noticed a pattern. Every time I finish a record, I tend to leave the space where I made the record. And it's like it served its purpose, and now it's time to go somewhere else, energetically. It's like, because it just took so much out of you to kind of make that work,
man,
especially a CYNIC record, So.
I really, really wish that was more of a common practice with artists, because the modern version, right? We know what it traditionally is. And that is, you slave away, or you get creative and work your hardest possible for X amount of time to create the thing, to get it down on there. Then it finally gets mixed. It finally gets mastered. You choose the artwork, you create the thing, and then it goes out, and then you're expected to triple down on your time invested in promoting the product and being super available right away for all the things. And I think you're doing it right. I think that's bullshit. Like, I think that the artist should get a few months off at least to like integrate what they just birthed. It's like you just had a baby, and you're oh no, in a week and a half, you got to be back to work 9 to 5, Paul.
I know. No. I mean, and there's usually, if you're signed to a record company, there's that window of like whatever they're doing to package it, but you don't really get a break because you go from finishing the recording to now dealing with all of that stuff, like the whole campaign to promote it, which is from the packaging and the layouts to the promotional campaign to whatever press. And I said that to Season of Miss after I delivered the record, because at some point I remember saying to like Michael, the president, who I talk to regularly, and you know, he's been a real confidant and almost like a manager in a weird way for me, is that I said, can we push this back to like March? Like I don't want it to, I'm not ready for it to come out. Like I'm not ready. I don't want to. And he's like, we've been waiting years for this. And I was like, yeah, but look what's happened in all those years. And he was like, no, it's too late. All the channels are set up. This is all slotted and calendared, and we've got to do this. And my response to that was like, well, then I'm not ready to do press. I can't talk to people. I need time to just gestate. I don't even know what I just made. I don't even know what this record is. Now you want me to go talk about it? Like, I mean, because it's such a cathartic thing to make a record that comes, it really feels like you're being used in a way. It doesn't feel, it's this weird paradox where it's so personal and yet incredibly impersonal, especially CYNIC's music. It feels like some fucking alien entity coming through my body and just making these sounds. And I'll tell you, dude, I literally, like, I'm doing a thing for Strandberg, you know, like next week, that I'm going to play to promote an updated NX version of the Masvidalian of the guitar. And I was like, I'm going to do a new song from the record, of course, you know, like I might as well. I've had to like relearn this song. I completely forgot what I made. I was like, what the fuck are these parts? Like, I'm serious. It was like, whoa, like, and you start to think it's like, this is what happens with every record. I look back on it, and unless you go on tour immediately and start doing that thing of repeating the set and knowing the songs, it's really like becomes this foreign thing that I start to observe, and I'm like, what just happened? Where did this music come from? And it's really, you know what I mean? It's strangely impersonal, like.
Absolutely. I actually think that's the best case scenario a lot of times for an artist, is to get that space away from the project. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going on tour and learning the material to, you know, like it's nothing. I mean, that's amazing too. But I think for you in this particular album, this particular case, especially, losing, you know, two amazing humans in the same year, early in that year, later in that year, the pandemic firing up, all this potential for depression and low states, like all this, you know, even when you're a really positive, well-trained, well-practiced person.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's the one thing, you know, the pandemic and all this thing has.
Oh
really
yeah, that was the other on
you know?
top of it, right? Yeah, I mean, it was like I always said it was like 2020 was its own thing, and then I had the bookends of Reinert dying in January and Malone in December of the same year, 11 months apart. So it was just like that. Those were the bookends to already the 2020 experience, which was already collective trauma for the entire planet. I mean, everyone was just going through it, you know. So, and as an empathic person, I was already absorbing the collective trauma, working with that. But then this overlaying of the loss and the grief, it was just, you know, I was annihilated to the root. And I'm grateful for that, because, you know, this is what we're here to do. This is what life is for. It's like, we're here to wake up, you know. It's not supposed to be a cakewalk. It's not supposed to be this cozy. I mean, this is one of the traps of even advanced meditators, and I'm guilty of it. And I have those days where I just want to sit in a beautiful, stable state of mind and just be, it's so comfy and cozy, and it's all open, and those are pitfalls, in practice. Like that's why you have to start really, doing the greater work, which is, and that's why I believe like a practice like Tonglen would save the world. Like you start your work,
100%.
we're others, helping others, being of service, and that's when you get into the real bodhisattva work of it's no longer your training. And it's not thinking you have the answer, but you just show up for others. You show up in whichever way you can,
Brother, I that's the one thing I'm so enamored with you on all these levels, but the fact that we share the love for the Tibetan Buddhist meditation and the Tonglen, the Chogyam Trungpa, the Pema Chodron lineages, and I teach regularly, as you know, yoga and meditation, and one of the things that I have found so bountiful in my own heart is the practice of Tonglen and Lojong slogan, using and this concept of turning, because for much of the first chunk of being introduced to meditation and yoga, I would repeatedly hear, breathe in the good stuff and exhale the bad shit, right? Like take care of you. And, and I was like, yeah, and I look around and everybody's like, yeah, I need to let go of the bad shit and breathe in only the good shit. and it's on its head, on itself, at surface, it's like, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Because that's our culture. That's the infection of that whole concept and practice.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes along and teaches you, or you get turned on to Tonglen, and it tells you, breathe in the black smoke, breathe in the negativity, take on that which is closest to you first. So your own resistance to being of service, your own resistance to doing the right thing for you.
Yeah.
And exhale all the good stuff, everything you think is good about yourself, everything that you've ever, praised yourself for, or any of that stuff, or anything you are genuinely good, you give it away and you give it back to the world. You give the world your best, and you turn the whole practice turns you into a responsible adult. Like
Exactly.
It's like in this weird, you're like,
Yeah.
and when the message I get when I do that, it's like, that's what this body, that's what this psyche, that's what this experience is for, is to be here for you and to breathe in not only my negative stuff, but breathe in anything else I can take on, anything else, and turn around and try to leave the space that I reside in a little cleaner than I found it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And it's and part of like, a lot of these practices is like they're saying you're really trying to purify your vessel. So what you're doing is you're transmuting that energy. And it's not like this holier than thou, I'm some person that can take the pain in the world and make it into light and spit it out, but in your own humble way to just energetically think, to even approach empathy with that sense of awareness. Like they say, in a city like one I'm in right now, LA, where you're hearing ambulances and police sirens constantly. Like that's one of the ways I practice. Every time I hear that siren, man,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to somebody who's suffering right now. Somebody is in a lot of pain. Something's going on. And it's that reminder. It's like you keep touching into it. And this is the thing. It's like it keeps you on your toes. You don't ever get too sleepy because you start remembering that we're all in this together, man. We're all in this together. And it's a way of really connecting with each other, connecting with our and I say all life, not just humans, but really, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's really kind of bringing together a sense of connectedness with each other and realizing that we're not separate, because you're right. Like a lot of those, schools, a lot of those new agey kind of pop culture schools teach, breathe in the good. And it's all ego. It's all self-absorbed. It's all spiritual, materialism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and a lot of these practices we're talking about it's the opposite of what you think you should be doing. It actually doesn't even make sense logically. It's like there was, I remember reading this somewhere where it was somebody in a class was like, if I do this Tonglen practice based on what you're saying, I'm going to get sick.
Mm.
Like the girl was like, I'm going to get sick. She said to the teacher, and the teacher says, oh, good. That means it's working. That means you're doing your job, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, but you know what I mean? It's not, again, it's not martyrdom. It's not,
Right. Right.
it's not about that. And it's not thinking that you're better than anybody. It's about relating to others. Like, this is what I always tell friends when they're in a lot of pain and they're having a difficult time. It's like, this is a great opportunity for you to realize that most of the world feels this way as well, and that you're not alone. Like, it makes you, I mean, for me, I feel more connected to everybody when I tap into that kind of depression and sadness, because it's like, oh yeah, like this is how other people feel too. I'm not alone. It's a really wonderful way of connecting, with, because you get out of the my stuff, because my depression used to look like the walls are closing in. Everything is becoming very small. And I'm in this little room and I'm like, oh, it's just like, it's very claustrophobic. But now it's like the tendency is to just go, oh, wait, no, others are here with me. And it's interesting how there's it's all psychology at this point, right? People would say, oh, you're just playing with states of mind. But, how we react to everything, how we perceive the world this is the beginning of a spiritual practice. It's like you have to start working with your mind, and how you deal with hardship, how you deal with the trauma of your life, how you work with this stuff. Are you running and eating chocolate cake or fucking getting wasted, or are you sitting there going, oh fuck, other people feel this too? You know what I mean? It's how you're relating to this experience of being alive. So
I feel that practice definitely helps us put into practice it's a place to practice turning and facing the uncomfortability of life, of this existence. And with each experience of deep pain, existential pain, or physical pain, mental pain, like you say, it's an opportunity to tune into the cosmic universal suffering, right? That the Buddha talked about and said, look, first rule, this sucks.
yeah.
First rule, and you just got to know that it sucks for everybody. You're not the only one that it sucks for.
Yeah.
But each time you come in contact with that, that deep sense of loneliness, and the physical aspects of uncomfortability, that can be the place where you, instead of closing off and going, oh, I don't want any more, I don't want any more, I don't want any more.
Yeah.
And you box yourself in further and further. Instead, we begin to try to cultivate that sense of bodhicitta, that open heart, that open, spacious quality. Yeah. Oh, no. I can open up to be a part of the crew, a part of what's happening here. And there's a universal thing. And if by calling a thing out, we go, oh, I mean, I'm feeling nervous right now. Already the nervousness is starting to leave me, right? I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. Oh, okay. Well, that acknowledgement of it helps disperse the energy to a wider surface versus keeping it pinpointed and rotating in circle in your mind so that it claustrophobically, pulls in on you, right? That's my experience of it.
Yeah. No. And when I hear, I was speaking to a friend last night about some of this stuff, and we, it was like also giving yourself a break. Sometimes we just can't do it. We can't meet it head on. We can't lean into it. And we may need to medicate. We may need to do something to not, and that's okay too. It's okay. Sure. It's okay. Whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, at that time, at that moment. If it's more skillful, great. If you can do it in a way that's a little bit gentler towards yourself. But man, if you need to just do something, hopefully it's just not harming other people, and stuff. But I understand, I get why people check out. I get why they, I have a friend right now who I woke up thinking of the other day and found out it was his birthday. Totally tuned into him. He was a friend that I kind of tried to help out for a while, and he fell off the rails, and now he's homeless, and he's been homeless for over a year on the streets of LA and kind of floating around. I saw him for a while, and then he just disappeared again. And mental illness, and I'm connected to somebody who's connected to him, and they told me that he's emaciated, barely hanging on, and living under a bridge somewhere in the really roughest parts of downtown LA. And I thought, man, I maybe I should go find him, and just see what I can do. But what's been happening is a lot of people who care about him and love him. He's a really extraordinary musician and songwriter, actually, really talented artist, just who went down, and he doesn't want the help, and he's been like, he always leaves, like he gets put in that rehabilitation center, that home, and he leaves. This is what he's doing, and just to hold space for that, and just, it's as difficult as it is, but I think that also he was such an empathetic person. It's like, it's that same empathy that's like, it's just one of these things. I can see how it's all connected with him, and he's just now with, right there in the barrel, in the bottom of the suffering, at the as gnarly as it gets, you know what I mean? As gnarly as it gets, like he's in it. And yeah, it's hard to bear witness to that and not be like, I gotta help them, I've gotta save them, and to just, but realize this is what they're doing. And so, yeah, it's, here we are, I mean, and we're not separate. Like, that's the thing. He, I feel like I'm in this with him, and I just feel like, it's like, who was I talking to the other day? Like, we were talking about, a friend said, oh, I lost, this friend to COVID and this and that. And I said, we all get to die somehow. We don't know how, unless we take our own lives. We don't know how. And whether it was COVID or being hit by the car or cancer, something's gonna stop this thing from going on. And you can't argue with that, So no. It's because a lot of people had this, a polarizing thing with the whole COVID environment, and
sure,
it's like everybody's has to exit somehow. And again, it's not being fatalist or arguing with like, oh, plagues show up and wipe out populations, but there is a part of it that just says you're arguing with reality. You're arguing with something that is just happening. And do you know what I mean? It's
absolutely, man. That's what's what it brings up for me is like knowing it's that ever-present like concern of like what do I do? Can I do anything? And and will it make a difference either way? Like I think that, and so yes, sometimes when things are within reach with a friend like that. I mean, I last year got the news that old high school friend, it sounds like he's been convicted of murder, and a close friend of mine in junior high and early high school. And I know his heart, and it's, it sounds like, he did it. I can't contest it, but there's a part of me that like, I was like, okay, can I help him? Do I go to the jail? Do I go to the prison?
Right.
Is anything I'm going to say going to be of any help? Or am I just trying to look good by feeling like, it's got to be about me. I've got to go get involved.
That's the other thing too, man.
Playing savior is a weird fucking head trip.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I ran around. I remember early on getting into volunteer work with the terminally ill. It was like, it was a combination of fear of death, but it was also feeling like, this is my role as a karma yogi, but I realized there was a lot of egotism in that. There was a lot of just like specialness. Like I'm going and working with the dying, you know, and it's like, so it's like now I'm, you know, trying to be more careful about even talking about that work because I don't need anybody telling me, you know what I mean? And so it's like, again, it's meeting all that stuff in a very humble way without having to talk about it. You know what I mean? And
100%.
yeah, but
Our motivations, and it's a funny thing because here we are on a podcast, you know, that's all these things, the way that we express ourselves in public, it oftentimes is a lot, it has to do with a lot of our private endeavors, things that people don't see, and they won't see if we don't chat about it, if we don't express it. But there's something to be said, as you're alluding to right now, that we should have a practice. If we consider ourselves a genuine do-gooder in the world, then most of that, what the world should sees of that around you should just be the tip of the iceberg, and most of it shouldn't be seen, heard, or blabbed about from the highest mountain, right? Because it's really, because then you're not doing it. It's not pure at that point. It's, you know, it's like there's very few things that are set up in a pure way, you know, and we know like Vipassana meditation retreats, one of the purest things you can come across in this life is for an organization to say, you can't give us any money or any of your time until you've expressly felt the benefit of a 10-day retreat. Then we might take some of your money and some of your time, but until you sort that out, until you actually understand where we're coming from a little bit, then it's fine. We'll figure it out. You know, we don't need your help. And so, yeah, you know, finding a pure quality in the way that we give, like if we always are going to receive when we give, always. But if we're always giving to receive, right, exactly. Then that just points to the work that, you know, oh, I still feel unloved. I still feel unworthy. I still feel like I don't get enough attention.
Oh, no. I mean, it's funny. Like I came from parents that never understood what I was doing as a musician, right? So they never really, they didn't not support like the path, but they didn't understand it at all. So it was never like, yeah, good job, but we love this, or you're actually accomplished something on your instrument, or there was no like
your robot voice is getting so much better.
Right. Nothing.
We love the robot voice.
There was no cheerleading going on in the parental department. And I feel like, you know, looking back, it's like so much of that. And it's so interesting how that happens with kids that grow up in an environment like that. It can go many different ways. And for me, it almost becomes like you almost go into a place of overcompensating and trying to overachieve because you were never seen or heard by your parents. So you're just like trying to like do as much as you can. I got to become the best guitar player. I got to do. And it's like, you know, someone's got to realize this, you know, let me go do volunteer work and help people. And just like someone tell me I'm okay, that I'm, you know what I mean? It's like,
it's trying to overcome that feeling of innate wretchedness because we weren't seen, heard, and quite cultivated. We weren't held in, and I think, you know, honestly, even those that are still come in contact with this kind of basic human wretchedness, right? That we have to like, and we almost, whether we admit it or not, we're kind of disgusted by ourselves. And so like all of our works, all of our deeds, all the show, all the act is about like, hey man, like I'm not that bad. Am I? Tell me I'm not that bad. Please.
I know.
Please believe that I'm not that fucking bad. Please. Anybody, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the story of the me, of the I, you know, and this attachment to who we think we are and our identity. And it's, the root of all suffering. That's what they, you know, it's like the story of our, you know, it's like, this is why it does. That's why like the Tong Lins do save the world, because it gets you out of your bullshit, you know? And they, you know, a lot of these practices, like it can feel so mechanical at first, but you have to just keep doing it. you know, and it's eventually it goes past that stage of being an intellectual process and it becomes really experiential. It's integrated, you know.
Practice and all is coming.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you just have to kind of keep doing it, and you know, it's you have to outsmart your own mind. You have to outsmart your own weird manipulative way of navigating reality and push through these blocks and things that we've built to. So yeah, it's an ongoing situation, isn't it?
It is. I think you just alluded to something that I currently ponder quite a bit, and that is the mind is so clever, right? Like, to outsmart, what you have to recognize about yourself and others subsequently is that because of the trauma, because of the things that you've experienced, you've gotten clever. You've gotten really clever, and you're constantly, whether you know it or not, you're trying to get one up on everybody all the time through your conversation. Oh yeah, well, here's my way of relating to that. You know, and we can do it subtly, even with spiritual friends, you know, that like, oh, you sat for 4 hours. Oh, I remember the time I sat for 8 hours, right? You know, you know, like, oh, you did 30 grams. Oh, I remember when I did 60, you know, like these type of things. And that whole funny little thing that we're so clever. So if we can come in contact with our own cleverness and how, you know, that leads to self-deception. Right. And that so that if we can know that about ourselves, that then it becomes more and more as we practice, as we sit and we label the thoughts thinking, right, as they come up and we can file them into the category that is just that it's not the now, it's not the present, it's not the actual happening in this moment. It's just passing through and it's trying to catch you. And if you don't get caught by it, then, you know, you remain in a place that is you know, uncontrolled by those external things, right? And
I mean, that's
find
like
a little bit of reprieve.
Yeah, I mean, that's you know, in meditation practice, like, you know, there's these states of open awareness, right, where you're no longer caught up in just the labeling or the monkey mind, as they put it. You know, you're not wrangling that anymore. You're just in this state of like, it's like a fresh open awareness. And that's kind of like, you know, if you can get there, it's like there's no one here. There's no more identity. There's no more like caught up in that me stuff. You're just in this like it, and there's nothing special about that. Actually, it's like there's no specialness in it too. It's like, so because there's no one there. You know, it's just that open awareness of just showing up for what's here and not attaching to some point of view or perspective or way of seeing. It's more just like, and there was a practice that we used to do. I was thinking about it again recently, and when I was in the early days of Shambhala, it was called wind horse technique.
Yes.
Yeah, you know about this. Like, I think it's in, you know, the training Shambhala training book, right? And it's like, absolutely, close your eyes and then you open in that direct seeing and open, fresh aware. And it's like, you know, these are all these little practices just to kind of, man, just keep the gradual awakening, the gradual way of showing up and dismantling the story, you know, and it's like people like, there's a lot of these non-dual teachers, you know, Robert Spira, I think his name is, and Jeff Foster, they would talk about, it's like, you're not broken. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing like, stop fixing. It's all okay. It's all just like, stop the story of the brokenness, you know, and people like Carolyn Mace would say that like one of the issues she had with the school of AA, which I think is a very high program in terms of getting people off of drinking and stuff. But there's a woundology aspect she would talk about where you keep recycling the story of all the harm you caused. And I know the idea is that you're helping others because they relate to your story. And this is how you keep staying in the program and getting better, because you're creating a collectiveness of familiarity with each other. But at some point you do have to stop with the woundology too. You have to stop carrying this thing on your back and
Yeah.
open yourself up, right? Just stop. You don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to be that identity, that you don't have to be the story of your past. You know, you can start again and be somebody new, you know?
What a great new word that is, woundology.
Yeah, she
Huh.
wrote about that a long time ago. I remember reading somewhere and I found it interesting. Yeah, it's woundology, like, because it's we get addicted to our wounds, and there's a whole culture that's so caught up in, like, I have a lot of friends, they just go from one healing practice to another trying to fix the trauma, and even this era now of all these plant medicines coming in, and understandably, you know, we're trying to look, but there comes a time where you just stop chasing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This, it's like you get so attached to the identity of the wound and what you, and this whole, that's another form of egotism, and kind of, you have to just like dismantle that too. You have to, but it's like these stages, you know, of like, it's this is why it's an ongoing situation in like a classroom, really, you know. It's like, you never, there's no over there. It's just ongoing and constantly, the work is always right here in front of you, and there is no over there.
Mm.
It's just right here. This is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean,
The gr-
that's one of the main things I feel like Pema distilled from Trungpa was like, it's not about getting somewhere. It's about how you work with the present moment at any
mm-hmm.
given time, at any given.
Mm. I love that when I hear Trumpa, and I hear it in Pema too, but the, you know, that when you find, when you stop and you collect yourself, so to speak, that you find that your situation is workable, and when and hearing yourself kind of affirm, oh wait, this is workable, like when, because as we're ramped up, as we're either tightly constricted or too far out, wound too far out, right, we feel like it's unmanageable. And so the unmanageability of, or the perceived unmanageability of our
Yeah,
current situation is where, when we get even further off, you know, the path, so to speak. I mean, it's all path, everything is path, but it gets further off the mark of,
yeah,
like, of finding yourself relatively free amongst all these external, you know, uh, different possible kind of, um, things that could affect you, right? So, you know, when we move towards that place of, like, uh, seeing ourselves and seeing clearly just the next couple of steps, it becomes workable. Oh, all I got to do right now is get my keys, get in my car, and go to the grocery store. I just, you know, all the other things can wait because I can't do anything else if there's not food in the house or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, the simplest math possible makes the
yeah,
situation workable.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes it's sometimes you can't even get to the grocery store. You know, sometimes you
Right.
can't. Like, I remember I've had those times, you know, where I couldn't. First off, like, eating is just impossible. I'm one of those people that, under a lot of stress and anxiety, or in high states of whatever, where I'm feeling overwhelmed or whatever, I just don't eat. Dude, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some people eat their way through it. I
That's
just,
me.
like,
I'm
yeah,
opposite.
right. We all do it differently,
Mm-hmm.
but but I found, like, I remember, like, learning how to ask for help was a big thing. Knowing, like, saying to a friend, can you help me? Like, I need to do this right now, and I don't even know how to do it. I don't know how to get myself to the post office and fill out this, put the address on this. Like, it's like you're that so broken down to nothing where I'm barely functional, and I've had those moments, and and to know how to ask for help. I mean, man, that's That's a big one, you know, to know and know who's there for you. You know, this is where you start to really see who your friends are when you really you're at the end of your rope and there's nowhere to go and you can barely get up, no less eat and be functional. And it's like, who's showing up for you then? Who's around? You know, those people that are connected to you. And I have some of those friends that have just, you know, you just feel, oh man, I don't know how I would have made it through without that support, that presence, you know, of energetic of people that. So it's like, yeah, because there are those times where all you can do is just not do anything and just and meet yourself there. Like, you know, like I got really comfortable. I remember early on with just states of depression that was immobilizing, you know, where I had to just let it do its thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, there you
run
are.
its course type of thing.
Yeah, run its course. Okay, like try and take better care of myself right now if I can, and just be extra gentle with what's going on because it's showing up again, that old friend, and it's not even related to a narrative or a current story. It's just this physiological ancestral trauma that's showing up in my fucking body. And I gotta just ride this mama out, man. And sometimes it's just whatever it needs to be. Like, you know, it's part of what I love. You know, I'm definitely a water person, and being down in SD County, you know, where my brother is and stuff, it's like, man, just to get to the ocean, just to be in front of the sea. It's just, I give all my problems to the sea. I say, this is yours now. Help me. You know what I mean? And, you know, there are stories about that. Some of those Greek philosophers, I think it was like Socrates, he would like run, you know, with his students, he would ask the salamanders for help, like you know, and the creatures, and be like, help me through this. And it's like, it's like, sometimes you just are wherever you can get some little support, you know, to know.
That's the kind of one of the other sides of being in a path or in a practice, is that we're always being offered these tools and techniques, right? Like, and that's wonderful. I mean, it's one of the things I thought to even ask you about. It's like, oh, what's the favorite technique or two that you've learned through the years that you kind of, you know, lean on? But like the thing that we have to remember around this is that, like, if we're always trying to, like, if every time something negative happens and we just try to like sweep it out with our technique, then that's a form of, you know, running from it. That's a form of avoidance. That's a form of, you know, trying to escape. And so also having the wisdom of knowing when to let the thing run its course, you know, and be easy.
And that's a tool too. But it's like having tools, you know, and this is where all this stuff, I think all this stuff is why it's worthwhile, is to spend time getting to know your mind and to just practice, because it comes in handy during those times when you're at the end of your rope. And I literally, you know, like being taken to those edges of grief and despair, having lost my friends, it was one of those things where I don't know if I would have made it if I didn't have a practice, if I didn't have these tools to go to and to recognize and to say, I got to ask friends for help now. Oh, now I do a self-care thing. Now I ingest a psychedelic. Now I journal. Now I just cry. Now I curl up in a ball and don't move for fucking a day. You know what I mean? Like whatever I need, but to give yourself the space. And I feel like that's all part of having tools to just, rather than not knowing, because it can feel so overwhelming. You're just running, you get manic and you can't, you know, but this is what's going on all the time if you pay close attention. there's nothing to hold on to, right? It's that the trunk book quote of that, you know, the good news is, right, that, you know, you've jumped or whatever, and you know, I guess the bad news is you've jumped and there's no parachute, and the good news is there's no ground, right? It's that, I love that quote. It's so good because it's so true. It's like you're in this constant free fall if you're really paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the true nature of reality. It's like, and to be in touch with that is to just connect with all life, because everyone's fucking feeling that, man, you know, on some level, whether they realize it or not. So yeah, man.
Thank you, Paul. I just love talking to you.
I love it, brother. I know. Are we getting into some music talk too, or what? I'm seeing these bars on your wall.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I mean, I this remastered Aeon Spoke is out.
Yeah,
that just dropped not too long ago, and I remember Aeon Spoke. Wasn't it in different forms and smaller EPs or something like that? It
started as an EP, and then it went through. We kind of self-released this record, and then we signed with SPV and did a remaking of the album with added songs. And this release now, because I took it offline years ago and just kind of made it disappear for a while. And it's kind of a re-emerging of the past early version of the band with the most recent version. And what's so interesting in unearthing this stuff is that I've gone and found, I went through the archives and I found that the Aeon Spoke period was probably my most prolific songwriting period of my life so far, where I was just busting out songs constantly. I'm talking every couple days, song a week, really in songwriter mode, it was just pouring out of me. And so I found so many demos, man. I would say maybe 75 to 100 songs people haven't heard.
Wow.
And some of them are more fleshed out than others, and some are more bandy, and a lot of them are just bare bones acoustic stuff. But I've kind of narrowed it down to about 30 that I feel are the juicy bits that tell the story of the band from the beginning to right before we reformed CYNIC. Because if you listen to the stuff right before we reformed CYNIC, it starts to sound like CYNIC.
I remember.
And a lot of those songs became CYNIC songs, which is so interesting. So I'm going to release these little EPs that are the trajectory of Aeon from the stuff that just got released, and then post, which is really interesting because you see how it kind of all led back to CYNIC in a weird way. And yeah, it's really fascinating for me to look back at that and kind of put pieces together of a weird puzzle, About
what time period did the stuff that you just released, when was that being written roughly?
It was basically, when CYNIC broke up in 94 or 95, we all dispersed from Miami and everybody went their separate ways. And I moved to California, and I had a brother here. I've had family here. So I came because MI gave me a scholarship. I went to UCLA to study composition, and I was on hold for the composition program. So I was just doing I had done all the core class stuff, and everything. And then I was like, fuck it, what's his name? Scott Henderson's at MI, Joe DiOrio. This book, Fusion, was a big deal for me when I was getting into jazz. And of course, I was a huge Tribal Tech fan. So I went to MI, and then this guy, Sid, this jazz teacher, and I was like, yeah, I want to, I'm interested in going to school here, maybe for a semester, or I just want to study with these guys. And they said, okay, well, do an audition. I auditioned and I got lucky. I got in front of these jazz guys who were like, oh, you can play. You're coming for free. You know what I mean? So they gave me a free ride,
Wow.
So I bailed on the traditional college thing and went to MI for a couple years and just sat in rooms with Henderson and Joe DiOrio learning geeking out. This was post CYNIC, so it was a dream
That's
because I could
incredible.
be a student again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, and then it was also for me, LA saying, come, you know, we're welcoming you into this city.
Yeah.
So, you know, I bartended at night and I went to school during the day and was just fucking practicing like a maniac. It was awesome. And then ended up in session work for television. And I worked for a guy named Ben Vaughn, who at the time, his first show was called Men Behaving Badly. And then he got Third Rock from the Sun and then that 70s show. And this was, so when I started working for Ben, I was literally getting coffee for him. You know, I was just like his assistant. And then he was like, damn, you're like overqualified. You can play guitar. You got these skills. And he was one of these eclectic dudes from Philadelphia who like knew music, and then he knew CYNIC. He's like, oh yeah, I know about that weird band. You're part of that band, you know? Like a lot of outsiders knew CYNIC that weren't in the metal scene. Do you know what I mean? It was like,
well, it transcends.
Yeah.
You know? And
Focus had that. It was like kids in jazz schools and stuff that weren't even into metal were like, this weird band, you know? So Ben brought me in, and then the more trust I got with him, the more he brought me in as a musician, and I started to play, and I was like playing, and I got deep into the TV shit, you know, and I was like scoring, and I had a Discovery Channel kids show, and Sean eventually moved out and we started our little composition company, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a composer in Hollywood. You know, this was the mindset. I was like, I'm done with the rock and roll life, you know? And, you know, we had our own trauma with CYNIC, but you know, I did the school thing, and I got so busy with the session work and the composing that I had to bail from MI. I never finished the program. I like basically dropped out because I had to choose between making a living and being a student again. And I was like, I want to make a living as a musician, you know? So it was fine, because all I was there to MI to do was just to shred anyways and just get, you know, I mean, it was just a blast. You're going from one room to another, jamming with sick musicians, and it's such an incredible environment to be in music school, you know?
I love that place.
Yeah, it's so that was, but yeah, and then we ended up, but it was, what was so interesting was I started to find that the whole realm, especially back then, this is late 90s, you know, TV wasn't what it is now. It was more sitcom era, where you almost like stooped to be a composer, and the real composers were people doing films. As to now, we're in the era of incredible television where it's on the level of filmmaking. It's like, it's high level art. You know what I mean? TV's thick now, right? And it's not just these little bumpers and cues just to fill in sections of the next joke for a sitcom. You know, it's like composers are really frowned upon in that world, and now they're like respected as artists, and it's just a different world in terms of how that stuff is seen. But I was part of that early scene where I felt, you know, it was such an afterthought. The music was this thing that you just like, you're just doing the music after, and it was like, it's more about the actors and the screenwriting. And of course that does hold everything in television. If you don't have a good script, there's nothing, right? That's the foundation. But as a songwriter, as an artist, I was like, fuck, this feels so empty. I'm just writing this like filler music and playing these stupid cues and sound alikes and, you know, doing library music. And it was just like, you know, it was nice to know I had the chops, but it felt so, as an artist, it felt really, I didn't feel better, you know?
I see.
And that's when Aeon Spoke emerged. And it was like, I started to get into songwriting again, and kind of, it was a way of healing from CYNIC's disillusion and coming back to my roots as a kid that grew up listening to, from a hippie mom, folk music and all kinds of music, you know. But I remember like distinct memories of Simon and Garfunkel, and, you know, hearing Bob Dylan on the radio, and like, you know, and Bread, and, you know, like David Gates and stuff, and all these songwriters, and that fascination. And I kind of had bypassed that getting into prog early on with CYNIC. It was like my voice emerged and went right into being a technical musician. So it was really all about coming back to the roots of like who am I? And this is really challenging to write a simple song. To write
You do it so well though, man. This group of songs is great. Like,
thank you, man.
like
No, I
I
mean,
I I just want to say out loud, I love every song on this offering that you've put out, but like Pablo at the Park and Suicide Boy, and there's a bunch of them but those two and a few others kind of it fit the 90s era that you
yeah,
were writing in, and like
totally.
I feel like Pablo in the Park, I don't know if you're even a fan, but like it reminds me a smidge of Jeff Buckley.
Oh,
I
sure.
feel
Yeah.
like you and Jeff could have been hanging out writing songs together.
Oh, I mean, I was a huge fan of
Oh,
Chrys
okay.
when they came out, and yeah, I
Oh,
mean, I saw him. I saw a gig of his in Miami, before he
oh,
died.
really?
Like, yeah, I
Oh,
saw. So, like, no, that was my whole scene. Like, that's the thing. Like, we were weird outsiders in the metal scene, having done CYNIC, but we were listening to like everything but metal. You know what I mean? But meanwhile, we're playing this crazy fucking prog death shit. But I think that's what made the music so interesting, because the same was true when we made Human. I mean, we were
right.
like listening to like all kinds of crazy, interesting jazz and fusion, and it was getting incorporated into this extreme art form. And so I think that's what made it so refreshing. It kind of gave it, it's like it also was like made it weird and unique. It gave it its own voice, right? Because we weren't copying Metallica.
Right.
We weren't copying these other bands. We were like trying to do something new.
Thankfully.
Yeah. I mean, I think your ears, like, especially, I was just telling somebody I gave a guitar lesson to recently, I was like, force yourself to listen to new music. And like, I remember forcing myself to listen to jazz, like forcing myself to listen to like unorthodox forms of classical music, because I felt like it cleaned my ears out and it expanded the harmonic content. It was like suddenly I can hear now how a minor six works with the melody, and it was just coming out naturally because I've been listening to a lot of weird, sophisticated harmony.
Yeah.
Or it's like you have to get it in your ears before it comes out of your body. It's like
That's some of the best advice I was ever given in music school. By my jazz teacher. We were talking, and he was like, he listened to a little bit of my old metal band, and he was like, okay. And he was kind of a stoic dude, but he's kind of like, so you want to be a good metal guy, right? You want to be a good metal guitar player? I said, yeah. That's kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying to book my band and write songs. And he's like, okay, stop listening to metal for a good while. Like, listen to anything else, but listen to things that are just super different from what it is that you play, and take little notes, like imbibe that vibe and see what from that can be brought in, so that you'll actually have something that is unique to say, that it's not, just a remixed Metallica riff or Pantera riff or whatever, and I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we're musicians and we're in the business of making sounds, so it's like you have to, I think it helps. I mean, I found now, like when making records, especially CYNIC type records, I can't listen to anything because it's so much noise is already going on trying to get this out, that it's like, I don't need any more input. I'm just like working through these puzzles. You're trying to figure out what they are and get them out on, into a production. But yeah, man, like it's true. Listening expands, and I think it produces more original and interesting music. Like, I mean, it's like it pushes your ears out, and it's like it's going to inform your craft. It can't help, And we were doing that as friends. We would always be like turning each other on to like, did you hear this record, man? Did you hear this shit? And that's the thing. So much of it is an acquired taste. It's not quick fix music. It's challenging. I mean, to this day, I still feel like I barely understand Holdsworth. I mean, that shit was so like, what the hell?
Mind blowing.
Well, it's just so like, it's so weirdly atonal in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no tonal center. He's just jumping around, and weaving these fucking alien fucking chromatic solos over these fucked up chord changes. It never quite lands. It's just in this suspended state, and that's the sound of Holdsworth. It's just fucking crazy shit, you know?
Everything all at once.
I
Kind of, you know,
know.
it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like but it was funny. Like we got to the point with some of those records where we're like singing Secrets, you know, that record in Wardenclyffe Tower, and like it's like you find how it was curiously catchy or weirdly what it meant to Holdsworth as like how it was like it made sense. It starts to make sense. Like, oh, okay, but it was such an acquired taste. It's like impossible to get used to it for most people to this day.
True. True.
Guitar players are fascinated because it's just like, what the fuck is he playing? But now we're at a point where, you know, the YouTube generation, it's like the codes have been revealed, and there's baby Holdsworths left and right. And it's just like, that's a sound, you know? And it's amazing because it was not a lot of people could play like that back then, you know?
That's true. There are a couple. There's a recent YouTube upload that's super long. A guy totally demystifying all Holdsworth solos. Yeah, it's like an hour or two or something like that. And it's got notes and all this stuff. And I started to watch it, and I was like, I don't know if I want to know how this sausage is made, to be honest. Like, you know, like it is mystifying to me, but like, and I do want to know like some of the voicings. Like, part of me wants to dabble in it, but I don't want to know too much because I like the magic.
I can relate to that as a studied person who spent a lot of time in music theory and all that. It's like I remember, you know, especially transcribing music, it's like you start to understand, okay, and this chord and this, but it's to a point. And I was luckily able to straddle that line where I could not write from that place. It was never theoretical writing. It was more outside the box writing, but it had the theoretical reference points. But it was still just fucked up enough to where it was totally uneducated too. You know what I mean? It was like straddling that line. And I feel like that's for the curse for some musicians, especially those with like high level perfect pitch. It's like there's no mystery to this. They hear everything and immediately know what's going on. And it's like the music almost loses its mysticism at that point. It's like completely like, you know it immediately. You know what I mean?
That's definitely a double-edged sword, and maybe a little sharper on that one side, because it's like, you know, I feel bad for people with that have an exact pitch in a way, because I see them wince at things and I'm like, oh, like it's difficult to accept the imperfection here and here and here, where they'd want to like straighten out the lines and the like kind of the humanity a little bit of it sometimes, you know, because they're so exacting, and they're like, at the same time, they're so exacting that they're ridiculous. And
it's a fine line though, because there's like those Berkeley cats, you know, like the school of even those bands that like they sound, it's almost like sterilized. It's so precise. But then there's friends, like I have this friend, Dan West, a pianist, who's an old friend who I worked with on a lot of projects. And he had this high level of perfect pitch. Like you can literally just go to a piano and do this with your elbow on it, and he'll just name all the notes that got pushed by your arm. But it was so advanced that he liked things a little out of tune. He liked all of the edges when things got fucked up, because do you know what I mean? It was almost like fuck it up a little, like fucking that's all amazing. And that's when it's like the next level. It's like, let's get into microtonal music and shit, because I need to fuck my ears up. They're too good. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like breaking up all the perfection. Stuff,
which is really cool, because then you're getting out of all that, you know, it gets so sterile. It just becomes too intellectual, and it's just like, it starts to feel soulless, right? All that education, you know. So it's straddling that line. I think that's where the art happens, really, where it's like you have to throw away the education and kind of say something. And, you know, that's a lot of things what I say to a student. It's like, especially these bedroom musicians that still haven't left their parents' house, they're shredding like maniacs. I'm like, go get your heart broken, dude. Go get lost. Go do drugs. Go live your life. You need that. You've got chops for days. That's done. Like now you need to have something to say,
Yeah.
go live. And that's has nothing to do with the playing. It has to do with going and having a human experience and being an artist, But
Man, all that say all in the background of my mind as we're talking here, I'm like, yeah, I'm really fascinated with and like hooked on the new Kendrick Lamar. Have you heard it?
I haven't heard it. No.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just like such a high level of art and artistry that that's on display, and like he's already a very phenomenal artist. And I mean, you could look back at his catalog, but this album from start to finish is like this healing out in public. This kind of, and there's all these little references to Eckhart Tolle, and like he's got a couple of samples from him, and some of it is uncomfortable. Like, I mean, in a way that like you and I probably couldn't create music that was uncomfortable this way, which we just wouldn't be able to. Like, we couldn't draw from the experiences, but the way that he's drawing from his experiences and weaving them into, artistic modern hip hop music.
Oh, I gotta check it out
with jazz overtones and undertones, and
nice.
And there's a track on there that I think it's "We Cry Together" or something like that. That it's like it's him in kind of in character, and this other female rapper in character, and it's a call and response thing, and it's just it's over the top. It's the toughest track to listen to because they're fighting. It's an argument. It's like you're witnessing a domestic dispute right down the street, and the cops should be called any moment, right? Because they're going at each other, but they're rhyming back and forth in the way they're doing it, and it's like if you actually stop and take in what's happening, it's absolutely genius. I'm like, wow. But the first two times I listened to it, I was like, difficult, man. It kind of makes me not. I kind of want to press past it. I want to jump past it, but I'm like, this is obviously on this album for a reason. Like, and the more I let it wash over me, and and then now it's like I'm like, it's still difficult to listen to. It's almost like, for a good example would be that movie Quentin Tarantino did, Django.
Oh yeah,
Unchained, right? Epic movie, but the second time I went to go watch it, I was like, oh, bro, it's so difficult.
Yeah,
it's like it was. I don't want to ingest it again.
Yeah.
Even though it's high art.
Yeah.
Kind of that vibe. But
no, that's a good sign generally, those challenging things, it takes longer to kind of, it's like, but once you get it, you're like, whoa, it's like you have to earn it, and I like records like that aren't easy, it's like I was talking with someone last night about that as well, a journalist friend who's actually up in near Berkeley, and he was saying how, like, we were talking about how an artist like myself can get really annoyed with the first wave of reviews that happen when I put out a record, because they're, in some ways, I mean, historically, real journalists are gatekeepers for like interpretation of art, right? Like the New York Times will give you, it was like people would go to that to understand a critique of a piece of art, a piece of music, a play, or whatever, and it was respected. It's real journalism. These people are educated, they have their reference points, and you would actually defer to them to how to perceive this work. And it actually, like, they became gatekeepers where they would they can really fuck up the experience of a record for like, an artist can lose thousands in sales or exposure to a population of people because of that journalist's point of view.
Yep.
So it's a very delicate space, and that's why I was like, in the age of, that we're in now, where, you had a lot of people just running around starting blogs saying, I'm a journalist, I have an opinion. It's like, no, you're not. You haven't educated yourself. You don't know, you don't have a background in this. You can't run around and just spew but this is the world we're in. I mean, it's happening with photography, it's acting, it's like, it's a lot of like mediocrity going on without like the background. It's not as like the integrity isn't there like it used to be. It's just, so you have to find where the opinions, the people that have like the, you know, the gatekeepers who have a little bit more wisdom or practice, who have more experience, right? And I remember like, you know, some of the reviews early on that came out even of CYNIC's album, I was like, I could tell immediately how much they listened to it. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, this guy didn't even get through the record, and he's running around reviewing it. It's like, you didn't even listen to the whole thing, because the things you're saying point to that you didn't listen. Like, you're fucking up things. I'm like, it's bad on the editor that actually let this review come out, and bad on the journalists who didn't do their homework. But there's this egotism that happens in a lot of journalism and certain outlets where they're just still caught up in their, you know, it's a bunch of fluffy writing, and it's like they're jacking off with how well they can write, and they have nothing to say. They're not really doing their work.
Just turning something in, you know?
Yeah, like, turning something in, or not really properly listening to something. And certain records, in some ways, I feel like records that get, because, you know, this happened with CYNIC early on. I mean, Focus was annihilated with our first album. Very few people came out and said, this is cool. Most people were like, this is bullshit. What the fuck are these lyrics? What do these kids think they're doing with this vocoder and the growl thing and mixing it up, and then these clean sections? They were destroying us left and right. Now all those people come back like, I loved Focus back in the day. It's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Don't act like you supported us. You didn't. I remember the people that were there for us. And it was few and far between, you know. It was very, but it was one of those things where, you know, but I feel like that's a good sign, actually, some of these records that get annihilated early on, because it's like, oh, maybe it just needs a little more time. And I was saying this to the record company, to Season to Miss, and to Michael. It's like, I don't even want I don't even want to read a review until like 6 months have passed. Like, people need to sit with this work. It's not,
that's right.
It's not a quick thing. It's like, you got to spend some time with this stuff. I've spent years with it. So and I'm at that place. It's a very like, and now I'm starting to get people, because we are at about the 6 month mark, because it came out at the end of November of 21, where I'm getting people saying, I get it now. Mm-hmm. I get what's going on. And I'm like, oh, thank you for taking the time, because it's not a quick fix. It's not that kind of record. It takes patience. It's actually difficult. It's a difficult record. It's so layered. It's so packed.
Dude,
that, it might actually seem like a mess at first. It might seem like a fucking mess, but once you listen, it's like, oh no, everything's actually really specific and precise, and I've never been so calculated in some ways, but it takes time to understand that, you know. And as a guitar player, it was like thinking about the song I'm going to do for the playthrough. I was like, do I do something that's more shreddy and kind of more challenging, or do I show something that shows the nature of a CYNIC song as a composition? So I went with more of the compositional approach, where it's more just like showing all the textural framework of what creates this really simple song, but approaching it with a CYNIC style riffing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it'll be cool to kind of unravel that in a playthrough, essentially. Like, here's this part, and just show it as a composition. And it's actually not that hard to play. It's probably the easiest song to play on the record, which I think is great, because a lot of CYNIC songs aren't user friendly. You know, it's like, it'll be nice to have something that you can actually learn, you know, like,
sure, exactly.
You don't have to be like a little, you know, it's a little more like, and I've always wanted that. It's like, I want to make it more palatable, but that music always comes out inherently complex, you know. The Aeon Spokes and the acoustic stuff is more palatable, you know, but
I really like that. It seems like, maybe you can confirm or deny, but it seems like as your songwriting has gone on, especially like as CYNIC came back, and Traced in Air, and everything subsequent, there feels like, to me, like an underlying like mantra quality to like what your, like how the lyrics unfold, and what gets repeated, and a lot of it, like it feels, and knowing your spiritual side, knowing, this element of you these days. But I look back and I'm like, wow, it feels like what I would say about this Kendrick thing. Like, oftentimes you're healing in public in this kind of poetic way. There's a healing taking place, or you're holding space for healing through this mantra.
Oh yeah,
And
they go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like they're not separate at this point, right?
sure.
And you get to that point with your work where it's not this thing that you're not putting on a show or a presentation. You're literally just channeling information that's coming through you, and at some point and it all is connected to everything else that's, you know what I mean? It's all like happening, and it's a very transparent process that's at the same time very alien. It's just there's so many things at work. But yeah, I mean, for sure, man. And CYNIC has that. It's mantra like, and I think for us, the difference with us as a band that was always progressive was that the song always took precedence over technique or chops. It was never like, let me show you how I shred. It was always like, what's the song here? And this is way more important. The chops and the playing is just incidental to like this tune that you're trying to write. And so the tune is like, and I think that's what separated us from a lot of the other prog bands, because so much progressive music became a showcase of chops and technique. And that was never our thing. We were always in service of the song. And that's always been how it's been approached compositionally. It's like, what does this song need? Where's the melody? What's supporting things? And we would catch each other a lot of times, even as band members. It's like, that's overplaying. It's drawing too much attention to yourself right there. Pull that back, But sometimes it's a moment of, hey, do your thing. Let's take this moment. So, but it's this dance of really, but a lot of prog became so, just, and it's like there's nothing there. It's just intellectual playing. You know what I mean? It's
hyper focused on
technique.
30-second notes and this and that. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what are some things that you've been listening to that are out of the prog map that would help break up and palate cleanse our friends out there listening?
Wow. I mean, it's funny. I've been like doing more just like interactive, abstract app things. Like there's an app called Endel that actually listens to your environment and like, and the pacing if you're walking or whatever, and kind of creates sounds that interacts with your environment.
What?
Yeah. And
how do you spell that?
It's Endel. Endel, like like end and then EL.
Oh, got it.
And yeah, and it's really just like ambient music. I'm gonna make sure. Let me just look it up right now. But yeah, Endel. But there's like, I like. It's funny. I think because I just came out of a record cycle and stuff, and my filling the well process has not been so much about listening again as much as it is just taking in new experiences, going out and being in the world and just living life fully, engaging, you know what I mean? Just going for it in every which way. So I'm kind of like, and I'm finding my way back into being a guitar player again in music, because I really, it's been a very interesting journey, man,
Can imagine.
Just like even just meeting the music authentically again, and like, what am I doing this for? And who am I? And do I want to keep doing this? Am I done being a musician? Like, is this over? Like, oh no, I'll never be done. Like, this is what I do. And it's like, oh no, but who is that? And what do you know? And do you know what I mean? And but when I pick up a guitar, it's like, it's a part of my body. It's so like, it feels so natural and so right to play. It feels like, of course I'm going to keep playing guitar. And I want to be a better guitar player, and I want to keep expanding, and you never get a hold of music. But also it's like, I don't know. I mean, again, these finite, it's like these boxes we put ourselves in, that I put myself in. It's, I just want to keep stepping out, just when the circle's drawn, just then the circle's gone. It's like once I've got that circle around me, I'm trying to find a way out of it, and finishing a record. It's like you get in this box of thankfully I'm not out in the touring cycle. I'm looking at all my friends fucking this oversaturated touring market. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. As much as I want to participate in a reciprocal experience with this piece of music I made with the audience, I don't want to do it in this method that we've been doing forever, this model. I love live performance. There's something really special about seeing an artist perform the music. It really almost, like Bowie said, it's not alive. It's not real. The album isn't even fully, hasn't come to life yet until it's been performed and executed. So there is that part of me that feels like maybe this work is more existing as like this weird amorphous sculpture that doesn't, like I was like, I want to tour as like a hologram, but not the cheap hologram technology we have now, like next level hologram. Do you know what I mean? Like a CYNIC hologram tour that's like some tech that we don't even know about yet. Like that
4D shit. Yeah.
Some shit where it's, like that.
Like you don't have to take the psilocybin. The show is the drug.
And there's exactly, and there's no goggles or something. And so, but yeah, like that traditional model, man, it just, right now, it doesn't feel creative to me. And I think maybe if we were more of a jazz type band where so much of it was, improvisational and free and experimental in a live context. But what happens with especially these types of tours is you get your set and you maybe mix up a tune here or there, but you're basically running through the motions. And the difference is little subtle things you're tweaking, like, oh, I could have played that solo better, or this cool interaction with the audience. But for the most part, it's not a very creative space, at least for me. And I'd rather be hiding, making more music, writing more songs. You know what I mean? Like, making art.
I wonder about for you, like I recently been working with Matt Mitchell, Pussifer, and that group, with Maynard, James Keenan, Karina Round and stuff.
Ooh.
And I recently saw them kick off their tour in Vegas, and it reminded me the last time that I saw them that every time I've seen them, they've only played performing arts centers. So the venue is extra kind of sweet, right?
Ooh.
The energy is like it's a performing. We're here. It's not just a show. This is, you're witnessing arts being performed, right?
Nice.
And I wonder about that, like maybe framework in some way for CYNIC.
Oh, absolutely. The space. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like my thinking all along with this record was to do science centers that have these domes, like where they do the laser light shows, or just construct domes, because you can pop up domes anywhere now that are temperature controlled and it's fully immersive. Like they're at all the festivals, right?
Right.
And there's a whole scene for that. And I was like, a dome experience that's immersive. It's all about the art, and you get to have this like 4D experience of the art that's kind of completely immersive, and it's not like a bunch of music videos put to the songs. It's actually recomposed, re-envisioned work from the story of this record as a concept in this environment that also is engaging. And maybe there's a live element to it as well. It's not just a video. Like there can be, so it's like trying to kind of figure out how does this manifest. And for me, it was like Oh yeah, it's got to be. It can't be traditional venues, you know. Like this won't work in a punk club or a fucking theater.
Right.
You know, it's not going to work at the El Rey. You know, like you gotta fucking put this in a space that's already going to disorient the person, so that they're because that's part of the perception aspect. It's like you're absorbing the music in a different way. So yeah, it's the thing is, these things cost a lot of money to do them properly, and you know, Maynard's got the bread to pull it off, you know,
True.
and a much larger following in a sense that he can execute it and probably still succeed with, you know, like where he's not coming back like in the hole. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking of all these tours right now, just with fuel prices and the
Oh
tour
man.
buses, and I'm like, how are they how are they surviving? This is brutal, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough out there, man. The gassage, and it's not just the US, it's Europe, man. It's everywhere. This is a situation. So it's an impractical time to be touring too, but everyone's doing it, you know, and they're
Yeah.
showing up, and it's definitely like the market's so oversaturated, you can just see it. I mean, most people I know are on the road right now, like in terms of my music brothers, you know, probably for you as well. And
Yep. A lot. Almost everybody.
almost everyone, man.
It is baffling to me. I mean, it's like I always pretty much always get premium gas, and it's like $7 a gallon now, you know. And I'm
Oh,
like, and my little Subaru cost over $100 to
yeah.
get 14, 15 gallons of
Dang, man.
gas in my car. It's a total trip, man. I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know if you're clear or cued into what's going on in Sri Lanka, but like that is like an extreme case. Like if you type in what's going on in Sri Lanka,
Okay.
it's like hyperinflation, people waiting for all day long to get 1 gallon of gas
No
because
shit.
they're rationing all
Oh,
this stuff up. It's
wow.
super expensive to get milk and bread and the basic rations. And it's a
Like a scarcity.
potentially smaller microcosm of what could be
Oh yeah.
allowed to spread to
Well,
the rest
that's
of the
like
world.
right. The you know, the word in a lot of the counterculture and the scenes I'm in is the next one coming is the food shortage.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's what you
Talking
keep
about it
hearing.
in plain sight. Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to get my battery thing. Oh fuck, there it is. Because I'm at 14% right now.
Oh, okay. Well, we can also wrap it up a little bit here too.
Yeah.
I've got to move on with my day as well.
Yeah. What you
But
doing today, man?
you know, Kiesel work. I got all these beautiful guitars here that I'm always doing other Zooms with awesome artists
Nice.
around the world, helping them sort out builds because that's our way of doing things. So, you know, oftentimes I'm either talking to Australia in the evening or you know, UK or Serbia like in the morning, and
Wow.
just depending on who's up and who's on the roster for getting a new build or has questions. And
So you're dealing with primarily the custom build stuff, huh?
yeah, all the artists. So like, you know,
Yeah.
we just got John Jones from Bring Me the Horizon, and that's a big band, and so he's just a touring guy, but like they have a lot of guitars they use for all these different tunings. So it's kind of fun to like, you know, hang out and like you get to know people when we do this type of thing,
Yeah,
and we
man.
talk about all the likes and dislikes, and then I try to like give some feedback on like, okay, well, you know, these things do well for that, and you know, help try to shape something that not only works cool but also looks cool for them, you know, both
Yeah.
aesthetic and functionality. Super fun.
Yeah, that's cool. One of the things we're going to focus on, by the way, with this shoot for this updated Strandberg is the pickup, and that you were a big part of, that EMG,
Yeah.
and I put that VMC controller, the mid-range EQ thing, and a lot of people just see one pickup and they think it's cheaper. It's like it can't be. But when you have a mid-range controller, it's actually acting as it's almost doing more than what a neck pickup could do in many ways. So I was like telling Isaac, I was like, I really want to take a moment to really showcase what you can do with this thing, and to show that how badass that pickup is, and all the versatility, it's like in that pickup, and also with the mid-range controller. So it's kind of, and so I'm psyched that I still have that in that guitar, because I know it was like that was part of your gig back then.
Yeah, the EMG 57 with the variable mid control is the Paul Masvidal like signature sound now.
It is. I mean, it's all that clean shit and everything, man. It's like creating these neck sounds, but you can fine tune it and dial it, and it's so badass, It's like, and that pickup became like a weird, like no one. It almost flew below the radar, right? It never got really recognized, and it's because all these buzz pickups started happening, like Fishman and whatever,
Sure.
which are great, and there's so many great companies out there, but that one, I feel like it's really a special, super versatile, super clear, and just balanced, and does it all.
I'm with you on that 100. I'll always be biased because I was there when we created the thing, and I was the one that spoke up and like, this might be the best thing that we've ever done.
That's so cool.
And they're like, no, we can't. We've already done all the best stuff. Like, it couldn't possibly be as good as the things that we've already made. And I'm like, dude, I will. So I told everybody in the office. I remember that day I went down. It was like an upstairs like jam spot, and I was like, couldn't believe my own ears. I was like, everybody has to go play this guitar, this prototype pickup, because it might be I played it against everything, and it might be the sickest thing we've ever made.
How cool.
And they just they were like in disbelief for a while. And then like after the third and fourth guitarists come back down, they're like, Chrys might be right. Like this might be the thing,
Yeah. I mean,
so,
EMG has such a history it can rest its shoulders on, that it can get comfortable with that, right? And not have to say we're doing new things. Like they don't have anything to prove anymore, but it's still happening,
Yeah. And they have, and I think that was kind of breaking the dam, because they had been able to kind of not do a lot, and they, but then they finally got the chance to do something for Hetfield, and that opened the doors. And then it wasn't until like Richie Faulkner and Andy James had showed up, or it was really Richie from Judas Priest that was like, I love that Het set, it's cool, man, but can you make it a little less gainy and more like a PAF, you would call it,
right?
And so, and Rob Turner was like, yeah, like grab a headset and switch out all the ceramic magnets for Alnico magnets, and it'll just knock the overall output way down. It'll still be powerful, but it'll knock it way down from where his is at, and it won't. And that'll probably work for Richie. And so like we put that into production. I said, well, make a couple extra of those. I want to try one of those, And that's where it happened. It's like we sent off something just custom for Richie because he wanted something for his Explorer or something, or for a V. And I had an extra, and I played it. I'm like, we got to make this a thing. And then Andy James dropped by, and I was like, hey, put one of these in your guitar when he got home. And when he got home, he was like, this is the best thing. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not crazy. Yay.
Wow, that's so cool, dude.
Yeah, and then awesome artists like you end up with them, and it shifts your way of doing things a little bit,
Yeah, and it takes, like, you have to almost personalize, because it is so subjective, the way that we use these pickups, and in relation to our sound, the music we write. It's like, it's so that's why working with the artist is such a particular thing, because it's like the expression of the instrument is being channeled through the art form of the artist. So it's all like so particular, the way that you can, do you know what I mean? It's such a unique, I mean, this is what you do all day long. So this, man.
I'm a consultant. I'm a buddy, I hang out and give advice. Yeah, I love to teach yoga and meditation, and I'm doing a lot of that here.
Are you? Good.
I'm thankful.
Man.
Yeah, there's this cool 5-acre like gym here that I never thought I would teach at a gym, but like it's a 5-acre like landscape of like 5 pools and all these little nooks and crannies of places you can work out all around this place, and then they've got the biggest, dopest yoga room in all of the North Valley, and it's really well decorated, and it's it's got big rope walls. It's not quite as big as yoga Center or the old
Right.
Larchmont thing. Are you still? Have you gotten any yoga in down there at Larchmont at all?
I haven't been back since they reopened. I mean, I'm doing my own practice, but yeah, that place is open again, which is nice because they all closed. I mean, that whole thing. So, but that's like it's kind of back to the Center for Yoga, which is the original yoga. And Joe's there again teaching.
That's what I was going to say. I missed Joe's classes on Sunday, especially the live drumming.
Yeah, I gotta hit that. I've been in touch with Joe a little bit. I gotta go hit his class, man.
Please give him a hug for me.
I will.
As soon as I can come visit, I will. I love him.
Yeah, and I'll let you know if I'm gonna be up there, man, because I actually might be up sooner than later too, because I got to get to Sacramento. But you're more.
I'm only an hour and a half away from Sac, so.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I can even swoop down and pick you up. No problem.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah. I got extra. My extra room is the yoga room, so you can stay in the high vibe spot. Like,
dude.
Yeah. So,
nice.
and I live right downtown now, which is its own kind of vibe. All this great eateries. I'm a block away from one vegan cafe right there, and then 2 blocks away from like
Chico.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I've got extra mountain bikes, dude. We'll ride up into the canyon, and there's all these swimming holes, dude. You're gonna be like, what is this?
No. I mean,
it's amazing. Yeah,
and it's considered NorCal, right? Is that
what's that?
Right? Is it considered NorCal where you are? Like,
yeah. I'm just an hour and a half north of Sacramento. I consider anything Sacramento or San Francisco and above all Northern California, I guess. But some people think that the state ends at Sacramento.
I know,
and they don't really know about Shasta or Arcata or the Golden the Emerald Triangle or any of that stuff. But Chico's a treasure.
It is a treasure, man. I'm missing that too. I want to go spend some time. So we'll be in touch about all that for sure.
Cool. Sounds great, Paul.
Take care, brother. Yeah.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Satnam, namaste. Hariom, hariom.
Yeah. Hariom. I'll see you soon. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good, Paul. Talk to you soon, brother.
Take care.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson. Pool table.
Players Pick Podcast is brought to you in part by our good friends at Dunlop Guitar Products, Kiesel Custom Guitars, and our favorite new coffee company, Road Roaster Coffee. Use coupon code PLAYERSPICK for 20% off your first order at roadroastercoffee.com.